Rolex absolutely positively must start making more of the desirable steel sports watches, especially things like GMT Masters, Subs, Daytonas, etc. I'll tell you why on the other side of the intro. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. Recently I asked you for some questions for a Q&A. One of the questions that came back was, do I ever get burnt out from watches in the watch community? My response was no and yes. I never get burnt out from watches. I constantly enjoy talking about watches. I've never found them a topic I'm not interested in. But I have been burnt out by the community side of it. I've essentially withdrawn from every watch forum. I have almost no footprint anymore in Facebook. I don't really comment there much at all anymore. I'd like to, but I'm driven away from both the forums and most Facebook groups by just the same topics coming up over and over again. And often it's the opportunity cost. There's so much space taken up by a fairly limited range of topics that actually interesting things just don't have any room. And the other one is that a lot of these topics, because they've been going for so long, they generate a kind of emotional heat that just is wearing, is just painful. Even if you don't get involved in the conversation, just this miasma of depression sort of emanates out. So and I've realized the community isn't going to change, that people are not going to stop talking about these things as long as they exist. So what I've done is instead made a list of the 9 things I wish companies would do to just put a stop to these endless, meaningless conversations. Here's number 1, and I've already given you a heads up. I want Rolex to start making more steel sports watches. Now, I don't like Rolex. I don't want to buy a Rolex. I've got no dog in this fight at all. But the constant, how do I get a Rolex? Well, why I got a Rolex? I wish they would do this. What do I have to do? Blah, blah, blah. Just make it go away. Please, Rolex. Just please start putting more of these watches into circulation so that noise stops. Now, I know full well that noise, if it was to happen, and it's never going to happen, but if it was to happen, would immediately be replaced by, oh my God, now my Rolex isn't worth as much. Oh my God, what happened to my resale values? Damn you, Rolex. So, but a change is as good as a holiday. So if we moved from one kind of noise to another, that'd be enough. So please, Rolex, start making more steel sports watches. The next thing is I want Omega to make a better bracelet. Now, I don't own any Omegas. I'm not likely to. I don't buy watches on bracelets. The one Omega I'm thinking about getting would be a Planet Ocean GMT, and I would immediately put that on some kind of rubber strap. So again, this is one of those issues. I don't care, but every single discussion around Omega seems to be dominated by a small number of topics, and one of those is their bracelets. So please, Omega, make a better bracelet so that we can just move on and talk about some other things. But while we're here with Omega, there is something else I want them to do, because I fear that as soon as they make a better bracelet, this other topic will just get more and more attention. So while we're there, Omega, can you please increase the water resistance of the Speedmaster, all versions of the Speedmaster, to 100 meters? I know it's completely unnecessary. I know it's a watch designed to go to space, not to go underwater, and therefore the 100 meters is silly and totally unnecessary. But please, Omega, can you do this for me so that people stop talking about it? One last thing, Omega, I know I'm being a bit picky, but one last thing I'd like you to do is I would like you to cut back on your limited editions. Now, this one actually kind of hurts me a little bit because I actually have come to love limited editions. There's some aspects of them I'm not really big fans of, and badly done limited editions do frustrate me. But in general, I think limited editions are brilliant things. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why. That's a video of its own, which is sort of bubbling away in the background. But again, if Omega made a better bracelet, that'd be great. If they increased the water resistance of the Speedmaster to 100 meters, that'd be great. One last thing, if you can please just dial back on the limited editions a little, and then I think we can start having some actual sensible conversations about Omega. Okay, so Omega, I'll let you go. Tudor, can you please introduce a great watch that is not a Black Bay? Now, I know that Rolex produces 14 different versions of the Oyster Perpetual, and no one cares, and everyone thinks that that's brilliant, and then runs around and tells everyone else that you should be more like Rolex. And so, Tudor, I understand that you're probably feeling a bit confused since you've largely done what the community seems to want you to do. But look, the truth is, you probably cocked it up. You needed to give the watches within the Black Bay line more identifiable names. Just as the Oyster Perpetual in front of the GMT Master and Daytona and everything else kind of fades into the background, you needed to do something similar with the Black Bay so that the Black Bay bit faded into the background. Maybe you can save this. Maybe you can start giving your Black Bays whatevers more interesting names instead of 58. But I fear that's not going to be enough. I fear you might actually need to produce another watch that isn't called a Black Bay. Again, please, Tudor, can you do it? Because it's a conversation I'm sick of having in social media. Okay, now I'm going to talk to Seiko. Seiko, I love your designs. I love the novelty. I love almost everything you do. Personally, I don't care about bezel and alignment fits. It's not my problem. I think that you more than make up for it in a million other ways. Seiko, can you please make that alignment adjustment? Can you please tighten up your tolerances there so that we can just get past this conversation and start looking at all the great things you do and stop being hung up on this pissy little thing? Okay, Bremont, I'm sorry to have to pick on a small brand. This is a little unfair, but can you please make an actual, whatever that means, in-house movement? I know you put enormous effort into case design. I know you put enormous effort into a whole bunch of other things, but the truth is there's a lot of movement nerds out there, and they won't ever forgive you for having a manufacture movement that you called in-house. And I know that no one knows what the difference between a manufacturer and an in-house movement really is. And they're all just made up terms and none of it means anything. But still, Mr. Bremont, people get funny about that. So can you please just do whatever it takes to produce an in-house movement that people can stop whinging about, and we can all start focusing on the bits of your watches, again, a bit like Mr. Seiko, that are magnificent, like those fantastic designs and wonderful cases. Okay, since I'm talking about movements, I'm now talking to every watchmaker that uses an ETA or Sellita base for their movement. Can you please just make it really obvious to all the so-called movement folk that you are in fact doing so? Now, whatever you do, under no circumstances should you start calling your movements ETAs or Sellitas if you modify them in any way. The engineer in me finds it absolutely inconceivable that you would change a part but keep a part number. So I'm not for an instant saying that if you modify your Sellita SW200, for example, you'd keep calling it an SW200. That is patently ridiculous, and no one could possibly want that, surely. But can you please just make it obvious that your whatever it is B17, IWC 1234. I don't care what you call it. If you can just please make it obvious it came from a Sellita or an ETA, the so-called movement folk will just calm down a little bit. Why do I say so-called movement folk? Because if you're really into movements, as soon as you see the specs like dual count, beat rate, power reserve, someone who's truly into movements will know exactly where it's from, and it won't be a problem. And by the way, if you're really into movements, you'll know about things like Watch Base and Caliber Corner and those other sites. And so there's nothing hidden. We all know it's not hidden, but people get their panties in a twist over this. So please, everyone who's using an ETA or Sellita movement, can you please just put in little brackets somewhere based on ETA Sellita, and hopefully we can move on to something more interesting and productive. Finally, and this one pains me, but tag Heuer, can we please just drop the tag and move to Heuer? I know that tag has its own rich history in motorsport. I know it's a design house that's been involved in these sorts of products now for probably over a quarter of a century, well over a quarter of a century. And I know I don't like the idea of you losing your existence any more than you do. But there's a thought that tag somehow has sullied the reputation of Heuer and that people can't enjoy your watches anymore. So as much as it pains me to ask this, tag Heuer, can you please just drop the tag and go with Heuer? Apparently that'll make everything okay, and then maybe we can start focusing on some of your really great watches. Okay, so they're my pleas to watch companies to do things that might enable the conversation to move on. Now, I have been very flippant here, and many of you will probably be a bit annoyed that I've been dismissive of things that you genuinely take very seriously. I apologize for that. I equally recognize I probably get wound up about things you struggle to think are particularly important. I'll give you an example. I care deeply about Hodinkee and the fact that they're not public about their conflicts of interest. They're not public about their role in the media and in the watch community. And instead they pretend as though there's simply nothing to see here. And I know that many of you think that it's a little hobby horse of mine and that I should let it go. As much as I've possibly been dismissive of the things that many of you hold really important, I fully understand that there are things I and other people really hold on to that you wish we would all give up on. So, in that spirit, come at me. What are the things I and other people consistently bring up that tire you, that you wish someone would fix, not because you necessarily care about it, but you want people like me or others to just shut up and move on. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. I've really kind of enjoyed doing this video. I'm looking forward to your comments. I'll see you later.